Hello, I'm Daniel Montgomery, and this is my informative speech. When I wrote this speech, I began with the question, why don't people go hiking? But eventually I realized that a better question was, why do people in the first place? Let's be real, hiking is kind of a dumb option. Instead of marching around up steep hills in the rain, carrying 30 pounds on your back, and sleeping on the ground, you could stay at home for no additional cost. Rather than drinking possibly contaminated water you hauled from a stream, you could knock back an ice-cold Coke while relaxing on the couch. Your own home is definitely more comfortable than the dirt in the forest, so why leave it for a long slog? And let's face it, pretty much everything you can do outdoors in the Northwest has a high chance of being wet, with an average of 0.13 inches of rain per day in 2017, according to the Seattle Weather blog. Despite all this, over 2 million hikers thrust aside the internet and other luxuries to venture into the wild in spring of 2019, according to Statista.com. Were they mentally deluded, or is there some better reason? I'm inclined to think it was the latter. I know that I hike very often, and I've had a hard time coming up with an opposing perspective. I'm here to inform you why people hike, but first let's look at the opposing side's reasoning. Here are some reasons, albeit not the greatest ones, why you should hike, and foodfuntravel.com's rebuttals to each. Using a good tromp through the woods as a bonding experience is something that many hikers enjoy, at least if picture captions are to be believed. The website counters with, quote, being bonded in misery and hardship is not the sort of bonding experience I'd recommend. There are plenty of bonding opportunities available at the pub, a place where they have chairs that won't make the seat of your pants soggy when you sit down, unquote. Now, I'm not trying to put down pubs. I've heard there are wonderful places as well. But this fellow makes a common mistake by non-hikers, that hiking is often a miserable trudge, which gives you blisters and sore muscles. Hiking may do this, but only if you aren't in shape already, as swim workouts will if you haven't been preparing. As an athletic activity, hiking isn't meant to be as easy as driving to a viewpoint, so there's no need to expect it to be. Second, I've heard that sharing a miserable experience is more bonding perhaps than sharing a beer, but I'm not quite sure about that. The sense of freedom in isolation is a real thing, but it is commonly believed that many good hikes, at least in Washington, are so popular as to be prohibitive. Snow Lake, Mount Pilchuck, Mount Si, and Rattlesnake Ledge have nasty reputations for being swamped with fellow scramblers. Some friends and I swarmed Snow Lake on the day of the solar eclipse a few years back and still met at least 30 to 50 hikers on the way, leaving frightening visions of normal Saturdays in August. In hindsight, Eclipse Day might not have been the wisest choice. Yet, among the 500 to 700 miles of trails in our state, silence in the wilderness can be found in many ways. More physical exertion, up higher or farther along the road, is one simple way, and both weekday travel and faraway destinations help as well. All of these methods are harder, of course, but again, despite the myriad of opportunities in our wilderness-filled state, hiking is not a perfect activity, and the better views you get, the harder you may have worked for it. As the famous climber and Cascade historian Fred Beckey stated, quote, one can drive on paved road to Austin Pass, Paradise Valley, or Spirit Lake, and admire the rugged heights of Shuckson or Rainier, or the shining slopes of St. Helens. But in each case, the view has been the objective, unquote. Having supposedly climbed the most first mountain ascents, or rock climbing routes of anyone in history, and chronicled them in his book Challenge of the North Cascades, and the Climbing Bibles of the Northwest, Beckey is certainly an expert on the subject. Hard work while hiking will always get you more than the cliched single viewpoints from behind the windshield of a car. Our friend from foodfuntravel.com now makes an important statement. Quote, as Nietzsche said, what doesn't kill me makes me stronger. What people fail to learn from this is the antithesis. What does kill me makes me dead. Unquote. Hiking is dangerous. It is very likely you will be killed if you fall off a cliff. Bears have occasionally been known to maul people, as have mountain lions. If you are on a multi-day trip, a sprained ankle makes it troublesome, if not impossible, to get back off the mountain. The website also states, quote, there are plenty of challenges in life that are rewarding, which don't significantly increase your chances of mortality, such as winning at air hockey, unquote. But treating hiking just as another sport, every physical activity truly has dangers. Football players often suffer concussions. Backpackers often run the occasional risk of being kicked in the head by a cleated foot, as soccer players do. I suppose if a swimmer got tangled in the little ropes that partition their space, they could drown, of course. Every sport has its dangers, and just because hikings are a little more publicized, a little more glamorous, or a little more removed from our daily lives than a strained muscle, is no reason to fear them more. I've now destroyed most of the arguments which this website possesses, and if you take a look at the comments, all of them involve whining about how hard hiking was. So why do people hike exactly? Is it a philosophical question, destined never to be answered? I think I've found the answer, perhaps, at least in Washington state. The psychological reason. Picture this scenario. You went on a few hikes during the summer, perhaps with your friends, and they were all rainy and miserable. However, winter sets in, and the weather gets even worse. Even if you wanted to hike, most of the trails are covered in snow. You take a weather-induced 8-month hiatus from the wilderness. But by the time June rolls around, you've had plenty of time to forget last summer's blisters. You've been soaking in rain for all of April and May, and the fresh sunshine in June gives you fresh hope. Newly excited and swept up by Washington's other avid hikers, you plan a bunch of hikes for the summer. So the reason for hiking isn't a true desire for hiking itself. The absence of it for so long creates an artificial need in your brain. I'm not entirely convinced of this psychological reasoning, which in truth seems quite convoluted. Hiking isn't for everyone, and it'll likely stay that way. Hiking has been given a false high status as an activity, however, above all other sports, when really it is on the same level as every other physical pursuit. If you don't expect hiking to be something it isn't, it will be much more fulfilling, and perhaps the ranks of hikers will have gained another. Thank you for your attention.